We've officially reached the midway point of the legislative session for 2026 in Jefferson City, and we're on the record today with State Representative Lane Roberts. Representative Roberts, thanks for being with us today. We've reached the midway point, but there's still plenty of work to be done.
Yeah, the most frantic part of the session is yet to come. We've had a remarkable first half. I would think when we left last week, we had passed more than 100 bills over to the Senate, and we'd actually started getting some Senate bills back from them. So it'll get busy on Monday.
And there were a record number of bills filed, pre-filed and then filed in the Missouri House this year.
I think the last figure I heard was something around 3,000 bills had been pre-filed and filed.
Wow, an incredible number. I'm not going to ask you to go through every single one of them. What are some of the highlights, though, of the first half of session?
Well, there were a number of them, and I brought a list just in case we wanted to talk about it. Some of the big issues, though, you know, what happened during the last special session and what's occurring relative to that today. Of course, you may have heard that the court has ruled again, a second or third time, that the redistricting map is in fact constitutional. Has not ruled on whether or not the House had the authority to do it, but they have ruled on the constitutionality and the compactness. So that issue will continue to move forward. And my hope is still that the voters get a chance to weigh in on that when the time comes. The other big issue probably right now in everybody's mind is the income tax question. There's a lot of misinformation about the income tax. I'm no longer on the budget committee, although I spent 4 years on it. That committee is probably the hardest working committee in the House. They spent many, many hours. This bill, as it's structured, is not taking $9 billion out of our budget and just removing it and then backfilling it with taxes, like a lot of people have been told. The process works a little bit like a balancing system. Economic increases have to occur. If they do, when they reach a certain trigger, then income tax goes down by the same increment so that it balances out. The idea is to keep it revenue neutral. There are also in that budget specific protections for schools and local authorities. Nobody believes that this is going to be painless. On the other hand, it's something that probably should have been done a long time ago. For just perspective, I come from the Pacific Northwest. I've worked in both Oregon and Washington. Washington has a sales tax but has no income tax. Oregon has an income tax but has no sales tax. Both states are tourist meccas. But when tourists come to Oregon, they don't pay for anything. All of that's on the backs of the residents. When they go to Washington, by contrast, is they help pay for all the services that they consume. And it's not lost on me that of those western states, only one of them is doing well, and that's Washington State. And I lived under those two taxing systems for a while, and I can tell you one is certainly better than the other. So I believe the governor's move toward trying to eliminate the income tax is a wise decision. It is not going to look like Kansas. Kansas reduced the income tax. We have a plan, and there's quite a bit of difference. So I'm asking folks just be patient yet. The budget is by no stretch of the imagination established. There's lots and lots of work to do on it yet. When we pass the final budget out of the House, it's going to have to go to the Senate. The Senate will create their version of it. What usually happens is they'll have a conference on it and come to some agreement about what the final budget should look like. And then and only then will we get to vote on it. And then it goes to the governor and he'll have his say yet again. So it's a long process. It's nowhere near over. When people ask me, well, should we be telling you what our concerns are? My answer is emphatically yes. Let us know what your concerns are, because as this proceeds, that will help guide us in rendering a final decision of what that's going to look like.
I want to get to the budget in just a moment, but you brought up something right there. There has been a lot of talk saying, well, this was tried in the state of Kansas and it didn't work out, but going back to something you're saying, this is apples and oranges is what it sounds like.
Yeah, there really is no comparison. Kansas had maybe the right idea, but they did not have a plan. And as a direct result, they created kind of a disaster. We have a plan. The income tax will go down as economic growth goes up. The two have to balance out, and the triggers are based in the economic growth. Those have to occur first, then the income tax reduction occurs. And it's a phase out over a period of time based on those triggers. There has to be commensurate growth in the economy before the triggers are met.
Now, we've got just a couple of more minutes to talk about the first half of session. I know those were the big ticket items. I know you had some legislation, though, that was able to advance as well.
I'm a pretty happy guy. This has been a very productive session for me. I only filed 10 bills. My role as Assistant Majority Floor Leader means that I've got some ancillary duties that I have to do. But 7 of those 10 bills are in motion. 3 of them are already over in the Senate. 3 more are prepared to go to the House floor. One of them looks like I'm going to be able to resolve that outside of the process. If I get to the end of a session, I've had 7 bills that got there, I'll be a pretty happy legislator.
Now, I was going to say, that's a pretty good batting average for a session.
Not bad at all. One of them, as a matter of fact, on Monday when I go back, is going to be heard in the Senate. It's a bill on police licensing. Right now, this sounds a little bizarre because you would think we would have already addressed this, but the Director of Public Safety cannot deny a license to an applicant from out of state if they've been suspended or revoked in another state. This legislation gives him the authority to do so. So if they make an application for an academy or for a police license, that criteria allows the DPS director to say no. The other requirement is they have to be a U.S. citizen. That piece was a little bit controversial, not horribly, but a little bit. There are states which allow veterans who are honorably discharged, but they are permanent residents rather than citizens, to apply to be police officers. That just doesn't work for me. The idea that a non-citizen could take away the freedom of a citizen is just not palatable. On the other hand, the military allows an expedited process toward citizenship. So if somebody is honorably discharged, they can get their citizenship more quickly and become a police officer if they choose to. We also have a bill, one of my bills, that is going to adjust the bankruptcy and garnishment rates that haven't been touched since the 90s. I'm very pleased with that. I got a lot of help from the Bankers Association. One of our local constituents, an attorney, helped me. And then we actually had the defense lawyers weigh in on this. And what we wound up with is a pretty good bill. It is now over in the Senate. There's a companion bill that Senator Sandy Crawford has. It's on our side. She's going to handle my bill. I'm going to handle hers. Hopefully one of them will make it all the way to the Senate. And I've got a bill out there. I think, Peg, you and I actually have talked about this bill. There is a provision in the Veterans Commission to be able to repair headstones that are damaged in veteran cemeteries. But there's no such provision for private and public cemeteries. So the bill that I filed would basically create a fund subject to allocation by the House for people to be able to apply to the cemetery who would apply for a grant to be able to repair headstones. And the issue came to me because there is a tendency, particularly for World War II and Korean veterans, to bury them next to a tree, which is very romantic and very nice, except that the tree continues to grow. And sadly, in many cases, the roots have invaded the vault. Nature, including the tree's growth, have disrupted or broken the headstone. And it's just wrong to leave them like that. So under those circumstances where the natural elements have somehow damaged or disrupted a stone, there now would be a process by which they can be repaired.
Now, you mentioned some of this legislation heading to the Senate. Let's talk about the next half of session. What's coming to the House from the Senate? What do you see as the big ticket item?
Well, the big ticket item, I think, on everybody's plate is going to be this question of the income tax. Whether or not that bill goes over there and stays intact, or if it gets amended. If it gets amended, it's going to have to come back to the House, because whatever goes to the governor's desk, both chambers have to agree on it in its entirety. You can't have differences in the two. So provided that it doesn't get amended in the Senate, it could get truly agreed and finally passed. There's going to be some discussion on the Senate side. There's not much question about that. We're still having issues surrounding the question of the use of the internet by children to access sites that they shouldn't be on. There was a piece of legislation that left the House for the Senate this past time around. The Senate will be dealing with it. It's going to get a little controversial because it requires age verification to be able to access certain sites that have adult material. There are a lot of people who don't like that provision, feeling that it's an invasion of privacy. There are a lot of other people who understand the damage done by some of those adult sites to young people and how they see the world and how they grow. And so the balance is how much privacy we're willing to give up in order to protect our youth. I think you're going to see a lot of really healthy discussion about that. Were there some just particular that you're concerned with?
In particular, I think the thing on everybody's mind coming up in the back half of the session is going to be the budget. You mentioned you're off the budget committee at this point, but when we start looking at the budget, what do you think some of the discussion is going to center around?
Well, a lot of this session is going to center around the fact that this is comparatively a bad budget year for us. We've been told for a while, our previous budget chair, the current budget chair, have been telling us for a long time that we've been in this honeymoon, but pretty soon we're going to have to pay the price. And that's happening this year. There are some very difficult decisions having to be made. And when I talk about the budget process not ending, it's still in process, a lot of the budget that the governor recommended has been dealt with in the House Budget Committee, who in turn have made some changes, and that will go to the Senate, and they will probably make more changes. On some of the lists, the things we're concerned about, impact on schools, impact on charitable organizations. There's an awful lot of really, really good work being done by charitable organizations. There are programs in our schools and colleges that have been benefiting our students a great deal, but many of them rely, at least in part, on state funding. Some of those could be in jeopardy. There have been proposals as high as 35 and 40% reductions in some areas. My fear is that not all of those organizations can sustain that kind of cut. And having been on budget, I know how difficult those decisions are. I mean, that committee will often be at work 11, 12 o'clock, even into the early morning hours in order to get a budget together. And we have a constitutional requirement. It has to be a balanced budget. So when you get down to the point where it's still not balanced and everything left to work with is sensitive and vital to somebody, it becomes really difficult. And then you have to live with those decisions and answer for them when you get home.
We've got just a couple of minutes left. I know this will be your last session in Jefferson City. If you could wave a magic wand and get one thing done by the end of this session, what would it be?
You know, the one thing that is nearest and dearest to my heart, I'm not really willing to talk about because it is truly a controversial piece. I have very strong feelings about it. Well, I'll just talk about it. What the heck? There has long been an effort to pass something called the Second Amendment Preservation Act, and I'm okay with it. If that act stopped at the bottom of page 3, I'd sign on. Constitutionality aside, the courts would decide that. I would sign on, but it doesn't stop at the bottom of page 3. It goes on for a page and a half and throws our law enforcement under the bus, and I just can't tolerate it. There is an alternative version of it. The proponents of the original refer to it as SAPA Light. It's not really. It reaffirms the commitment of our law enforcement officers, sets out very clearly what's expected of them, but it doesn't paint a target on their back. And the current bill creates an entirely new civil action aimed squarely at police officers, their agencies, and their employers, and I just cannot abide it. Their job's tough enough without adding that to the mix. Plus, it denies them the ability to work with the federal government on certain issues. Well, if you're not going to cooperate with the federal government on certain issues, when you need the federal government, are they going to be cooperative? You know, you'd like to think they'd rise above it, but people are people. It's just not a healthy environment to say, we won't help you, but we expect you to help us.
I know we will be having you back on soon to talk more about what's happening in the Missouri legislature. Again, State Representative Lane Roberts, thank you for going on the record with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
This coming April, voters across Southwest Missouri will see tax questions on their ballots. One of those will be in Liberal, Missouri. We're on the record with Barry Yoakum, Superintendent of Liberal Schools. First of all, Mr. Yoakum, thanks for going on the record with us. What exactly will that question look like in the Liberal School District?
Thanks so much for having me. It's definitely a pleasure. In April 7th, 2026, we're going to ask the district, or ask our voters, to extend a bond issue. The current bond issue was approved in 2018 and was very impactful for our community. That 2018 bond helped our district put in a safe room at the elementary and then a FEMA gym at the high school. And the extension of that, it is a no tax rate increase extension bond, and it's going to help identify, or it's going to help solve a couple of projects for us. One of them being new roofs. When I came back in July, one of the biggest priorities that our Board of Education had, our staff had, is our roofs. There are some leaks, significant leaks when it rains. So there was a how are we going to fix the roofs? What are some options that we have? And since then, we decided to do some long-range facility planning, community meetings with our community to get their input. And with their input and these meetings and surveys, we have developed a proposition. It's called Proposition Kids, and it'll be on the ballot April 7th, 2026.
Now, I want to go back to something you said there at the very beginning. This
Yes.
is not a new tax.
Correct.
This is simply, we want to keep in place what's already there.
Correct. So going backwards a little bit, in 1998, the liberal community approved a 41-cent debt service tax levy to help build a wing of the middle school, high school. It had some middle school classrooms, agricultural facility, and an industrial arts classroom. That was approved in 1998. It was paid off in 2013. So from 2013 until 2018, there was no debt service tax levy in the liberal community. In 2018, the voters approved the 60-cent tax levy that we currently have. At that point, it was for $3 million. And this Proposition Kids would be an extension of that. And we've identified 11 projects that would go on this, that would be included in this project if the voters approve it.
And one of those that you mentioned a moment ago, the roofs.
Correct.
I think anybody that owns a home or a business, the roof is one of those things that you don't think about a whole lot, but it is hypercritical to an institution.
Sure, and I think roof upkeep is extremely essential. But I think when you kind of get to the point where you can't upkeep anymore and you've got to replace, you don't have a lot of option at that point. And as I mentioned before, that was a big priority coming in for the board and for our staff was, okay, what options do we have to address our roofs leaking? And throughout that process, we were able to develop a bond extension. Talking to our bond underwriter, we are eligible for that because the district over time has been good stewards with our funds, and we're in a good position to extend that in April.
So let's look at this question from a couple angles.
Sure.
Voters head to the polls. They say yes this coming April. How quickly could we start seeing work get underway?
So our goal is potentially this summer. A lot of it depends on a variety of factors. What kind of lead time do we have to get supplies? What kind of CMAR that we can get in place, architects. There are a lot of factors that go into play, but our goal is to start this summer and then just continue throughout the next school year.
On the other hand, if voters were to say no, what happens then?
Sure. So with this particular bond, kind of nothing. I mean, so the 2018 bond would still be on we would still have that debt service at 60 cents. So that would continue until the current bond is paid off. If the voters approve, then that 60 cents would just be extended. So really, if the voters decide not to approve, we wouldn't be able to do the projects that we've identified, and their taxes would remain the same until that current bond is paid off.
And going back to something like the roof, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot with it, but repairing something like the roof, it seems to me that's you're almost preventing further necessary repairs down the road.
Sure. I think as you're growing up, you're taught, what are the needs? We talk about needs and wants and food, water, shelter. The shelter part of it is important. Obviously, we want to make sure that the roof is, we want to keep our students safe. We want to have a safe learning environment where our teachers and our students can focus on learning and academics. I mean, that's a high priority for us. So being able to have good facilities that people can be proud of and that can protect, the investments that we have is very important.
Again, it'll be on the April 7th ballot, and I know we mentioned this from the beginning, but I think it bears mentioning again. The district not asking for a new tax, not asking for a tax increase, simply an extension of what's already there.
Correct. I mean, so really, when you look at school districts, when they take on debt, they basically have to get voter approval. And that's kind of what this is the district's asking the community to approve taking on some debt to do some much needed projects. And I do want to mention that the major project here is roofs for the elementary and middle school, high school buildings. The second major project is creating a secure entrance for our middle school, high school. An entrance where you had to come in, check in, being in a holding area before you check in with our secretaries, and then you can get buzzed into the general population of the school. Right now, we don't have that. And then a third would be securing our playground. Right now, our playground is not fully fenced in, which creates some safety issues that we can't necessarily control the environment without having everything fenced in. So those are the top kind of three projects of this. When we get down deeper, we're looking at improving some HVAC for our efficiency. We've identified about 16 HVAC units that should be replaced based on age and functionality. Some flooring, as you mentioned before, once you have a solid roof in play, you can take care of other things. We've got some dated flooring in our middle school, high school hallways, elementary hallways, windows. Again, just some dated windows. When you're looking at buildings that are 50 plus years old that haven't had windows replaced in that time, you're looking at some inefficiencies from weather getting in and wind getting into those things. So a lot of these projects, really all of them, focus around safety, security, and efficiency for our district. Other projects that have been identified, updating our track a little bit, creating a new concession stand, updating the concession stand and restrooms for our baseball and softball facilities are also part of that plan. Securing some interior doors at our high school and just creating some thicker doors that are safer. Enclosing our agricultural hallway is part of this currently. In order to get to our ag classroom, students either have to walk outside to enter or they have to walk through another classroom to get to it, which is, one, it's not safe obviously to walk outside every time, and then two, it's disruptive to that other classroom. So it's a variety of projects that are all revolving around safety, security, and efficiency. And the beauty of this proposition is, this isn't my list or this isn't the Board of Education's list. Really, it's a community-driven list that the community has helped us prioritize through community meetings. We had one in October, November, and December. We've sent out surveys throughout this process to try to get community members' feedback, because ultimately, this is our school. It's not my school, it's not the board's school. It's the community's school, and it's the heartbeat of this community, and it's something that liberal community members are proud of.
And I know I'm asking you to look a little bit into a crystal ball here, but since you mentioned the surveys and the community meetings, how has the community responded to the idea of extending the bond?
I think positive. I mean, as we mentioned before, no one enjoys to pay more taxes, and I don't think that's something that anybody enjoys. But I think, our goal, my goal specifically, and like I've told, when I've had meetings, my goal is to try to inform you so you can make your best informed, educated decision. And I think the community understands where we are as far as, what some of our needs are. And we're no different. I mean, every school, if you talk to any superintendent, they've all got facility needs. I mean, that's just the way that it is. You've got so much square footage, you've got so much use, that you're just going to have a revolving door of facility needs. And I think it's just important to be smart, be strategic when you look at identifying those needs, and then how you're going to address those needs, I think is important. And I think the community has shown some good feedback. Again, our job is just to communicate with them on why we need this, why it's important. And then the community members have the opportunity to use their vote to help us decide.
Now, if somebody out there is watching and they have questions, what should they do?
Yeah, they can reach out and call me at 417-843-5115. Be happy to talk to them about that. There's also there's a Facebook page that they can communicate with us as well on the district page. But the best thing would be just to call.
Okay. And again, that question on the April 7th ballot in the liberal school district, we've mentioned it a couple of times. It's a no tax increase bond extension, again, on the April 7th ballot in the liberal school district. Mr. Yoakum, again, thank you so much for going on the record with us.